Wednesday Night Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us. Everyone in.
It's spinning! It's spinning! Jonathan Sexton has made it!
Do you feel moderately happy?
No, I feel like I've been kissing my sister, I suppose.
In the pocket for his drop goal attempt. Here he goes, O'Gara. He's done it! That surely is the Grand Slam.
We target players all the time. That's part of rugby, isn't it? Let me know.
Sexton, wonderful pass and Stockdale finishes.
There'll be more than grenades. There'll be full tanks and full shells landing on the Aviva.
Grand Slam winners on St. Patrick's Day at Twickenham.
Now then, we're joined by Eddie O'Sullivan. You're there, Eddie?
Indeed.
Good man. And Keith Wood, you're there?
I am, of course. How are you doing,
Yeah,
Joe?
very well, very well. So we're just past the halfway point in the 2019 Six Nations, Keith. It's not the Irish adventure we expected to be talking about. These are interesting times.
Very interesting times. I think we all went into this tournament on the crest of expectation, maybe, and rightfully so for what we'd actually done and achieved last year. We may have. I won't say we dreamt too high, I don't think so, but we definitely haven't performed to the heights that we would have liked to, without a shadow of a doubt. And if I was giving a three-match view back on, I would say that against England, we didn't get to the tempo of the game and exactly how far off we were, but we were a bit off. And we've suffered for it ever since, actually. We seem to have struggled all the time since.
Joe Schmidt had very interesting comments yesterday in the papers. He said the players are a bit broken, was the word he used. A bit broken on the back of that English performance. He talked about management having to pick them back up. Can one emphatic defeat like that have such a destabilising effect on things like confidence and belief in the plan and belief in each other? Can one defeat do that?
I think so. I remember looking in the last 15 minutes or 20 minutes of that English game, we looked shell-shocked. And, you know, we've been working very, very hard, and we've had the results that we had for the last year, which were excellent. We still have it's almost like a spectre of a World Cup on the horizon. We knew that everything was leading towards that. And suddenly a team had found out how to play us very well, bully us in some degree, and had figured us out and had figured out a way to kind of unsettle Ireland, and did it really well. And I actually think it affected us. And it was one of the worries I said the week after when they were going to go to Scotland, whether they'd actually be able to get over that defeat and to get the confidence to do it. And you know what? We didn't. We didn't. I don't even think we played as well against Scotland, but we got the result. And I thought we were poor, very poor at the weekend. Our attention to detail was well off, and partly because of that, but we played Italy away and won away, which we would have a full expectation still to do, playing badly, and we did it. But we do need to rectify that pretty promptly.
Eddie, there are so many fascinating aspects to the psychology of this. You know, Keith there talks about the spectre of the World Cup looming large, and it certainly does. And when you have a phrase like other teams figured us out, there's not much time to reinvent yourself with the World Cup coming. We've been figured out maybe at just the wrong time, which is adding to the sense of pressure on everybody.
I think there's a combination of factors. I've been saying this since after the England game, but even it's more evident now that the defeat to England has done damage to the team psychologically. And it's interesting, George Schmidt came out and pretty much admitted that. He said they're a bit broken, but I'm not surprised. That defeat to England was not just a defeat, it was just the way we were beaten. They really came to town on a mission, and they just had our number. So that does send a shockwave through a team, no matter how experienced they are. And I think in the last two games, what you've seen is a huge amount of nervousness and almost a bit of stage fright, and uncharacteristic Ireland making mistakes. And I agree with Woody. I thought the performance in Scotland was a win, but that was about the size of it. We were very lucky. I mean, I keep referring back to Joey Carberry's line break that led to Keith Earl's try, which sealed the game. I mean, that was out of nothing. I mean, Scotland would kick themselves for letting them run through two tacklers. Had they turned them over there and kicked a penalty, they would have been in the lead. It would have been maybe a different outcome, you know. So we have this nervousness around the team at the moment, and we're all hoping that last weekend we would kick on in Italy. You know, it's a team that we should scalp pretty easily. We've hit them for almost 60 points over the last 3 years. But again, once the mistakes started, the malaise spread again, you know. And I think it's a very difficult place, you know. This team are not a bad team, but at the moment they're playing with that bit of trepidation, and there's like a weight on their shoulders, and it's a very fickle thing. But once it starts to spread, and you see it as the game goes on. We started out well last week with 2 tries in the bag. You think, no, we're going to kick on, and then we make a couple of mistakes, and suddenly everyone's looking at each other under the post, and nobody's talking, and it's that lack of chat you see going on, that lack of fellas barking at each other. That's the thing that's worrying. That there's this confidence and the strut we had last year. You know, we're arguably the best team in the world last year. It's the same team, but that strut is gone, and that is a bit of a worry. There's no doubt, and it's a very hard thing to find, but there's 2 games left in the championship, and we've got to find something in those 2 games. I mean, we all thought Scotland, then we said, okay, you know, Italy, now we're looking at France and Wales. And to be honest, I think the French game is hugely important now, because if we have another stuttering game against France, even if we beat them, it'll all hinge on going to Cardiff. And Cardiff is not the place you want to go to when you're feeling a bit, I suppose, vulnerable. Yeah. Because the Welsh are really hard to beat in Cardiff.
A question I'm going to get both your thoughts on, but I'll stick with you for the time being, Eddie. Has there been a common denominator in what England, Scotland and Italy have tried to do against us? I'm asking that with the they've figured us out line in my head, or have there been different ways that they've given Ireland trouble?
Well, that's the other side of the discussion at the moment, which I think, you know, they have to look at as well, is that we haven't figured out a bit, as Woody said. England shut us down, and they exposed our 13-man in the line defence with kicks in the backfield. They did it very well. I don't think Scotland were able to produce the same amount of problems for us. I think we adjusted a little bit, and I don't think Italy had the wherewithal to do it either, to be honest. But a better team might expose us more. So there's that defensive structure that now looks a bit vulnerable when the ball's put in behind us. And then you have our own attack. Our attack has been, again, I think figured out. Teams have figured out how to get in front of us and put us down. I mean, there was a classic example last Sunday. We hit a lovely ball off the top of a short line. We did a starter play. We hit Sean O'Brien up the middle. We swept back the short side. It was all training ground stuff. Murray is not a scrum half, he's a first receiver. He spots out the back to Sexton. Sexton hits a wrap around, another spot out the back, and then Kilcoyne off up the touchline 15-20 metres. We're on the front foot, and then we go back to 5 one-off runners, which ends up with Tyg Furlong being tackled, you know, back at the 10-metre line on the other side of the field, and we've given away all the momentum that we built. And I think teams are figuring out that if they can contain us for 2 or 3 phases, and we're good off the starter stuff because there are nice wrinkles in there, but if they can hang in there for a couple of phases off the starter plays and then just get off the line, we do go into one-off runner mode with no tip-ons or no animation, and they do know our out-of-jail players, Sexton, around the corner, out the back, and they're reading that as well. So we need to think about that as well. That makes it easier for teams to lock us down. So we have a team who are rattled in confidence, and the opposition are kind of locking them down in terms of figuring out where we're at. That doesn't help either.
Well, Keith, why did one-off runner mode not prove as damaging for Ireland in previous years?
It tend to happen in different places of the field, as opposed to happening. So we're quite happy to go one-off runner close to the line and keep it there for 40 phases. When you're 40 yards further out, that's much harder to make real inroads in. But just to go back to your first point there, you said, you know, how did those teams stop us or slow us down over the last few weeks? I think they slow down the ruck ball. That's the first point. Conor Murray is going in, digging for ball. He's stepping over people, wading over people. Virtually every time he's going in there, and he's 6'3" or whatever height he is, he's never going to be the fastest, and never was the fastest at that spot. He wants cleaner ball all the time, and we probably need to be making it a little bit easier for our 9 and 10. The opposition line speed has changed radically. So the hard push up from 7 and outside 7, 10 to 13 in the face of every player that's there, and they're not missing a whole lot of tackles. So that's the second point. For our kicking game, which is a big attacking ploy for us, they've been shielding all our chasing runners. And there's been a change, whether it's a change in the law's interpretation, but since the autumn, that has changed. If you look now, when the ball is kicked up, you'll see 6 people in between the catcher and Ireland's runners. And the last point is there seems to be an increase in the dominant tackles. We're calling it dominant tackles now, but in the big hits that we would have said. They're highlighting the players that are getting the ball and they're making those hit early. So I'd say that on one part of it. The other part of it is we are missing some key players. So our 9 and 10 are struggling a little bit in their confidence and they're carrying the can all the time. But they seem to be 2 of the players that are carrying an awful lot more than they even did last year. Without CJ in there, without Levy in there, without Ringrose and Henshaw, there's not a lot of people that are putting their hands up to take it going forward a bit. And an awful lot. And in my feeling, looking at the game last week, it almost looked as if everything was based around 9 and 10. And we need other players that are willing to come forward too. So even some of the analysis we've seen in the papers in the last week or 2 weeks, it is all focused around 2 players. Now, why we would want to only focus around 2 when there's 15 or 23 that play on a weekend is something that I would say. But I do think their confidence at 9 and 10 is down markedly, and you can see it in them and you can see it in their body language. Can that change? It can change pretty quickly, but they can't just make a change on their own. I mean, it's a team game, and that's what we would always say. And I'd be trying to put everything on a platter for 9 and 10. We shouldn't be struggling for anything at all because their confidence is a bit low.
Several really interesting aspects there. If we start with ruck ball for a second, because that's such a hallmark of the Joe Schmidt era. Are teams doing anything different at ruck time to slow Ireland down?
I'm not sure. I think they're targeting the joining players as opposed to targeting the ball for the most part. So the guy who carries it in, he gets tackled. It's whether there's a slowing down of the next man that goes in over or past the ball. I feel that seems to be happening a bit more. Technically, I don't know whether Eddie has seen a whole lot in terms of that, but I do know our ball is slower.
Yeah.
That we do know.
Eddie, ruck time?
Yeah, I think what you refer to there, I think the key is that teams are identifying early doors who the ball carrier is, and then it makes it easy for somebody to go in low and chop. Like, we have good ball carriers. It's just that no matter how big a guy is, if you chop him around the ankles, he's not going anywhere. So they've identified our ball carriers a lot of the time early doors. They go in, chop them, and then they only contest if there's a chance to steal the ball. And we're so good actually at getting support in that they usually isn't. So what they do then is they get back on their feet. So even sometimes you see Ireland winning rucks and there's only one defender on the ruck, that's the chop tackler, or maybe even he's rolled away and got up on his feet. So they have 13 guys in the line and there's no space. And then if they identify the second ball carrier, he ends up being hit behind the gain line. And, it's a chicken and an egg, And I think we need to find a way of varying the strike point, like that it's not obvious to defences who's going to take the ball to the line. And that buys you, it only needs the slightest bit of space, the slightest bit of a soft shoulder, and your collision then is on the other side of the tackle instead of your side of the tackle, and that's your go forward. And, we got that done last year a lot of the time, but there have been times over the last few years where that has been a problem. And if you go back to losing in Edinburgh a couple of years ago, the takeaway was that fellas like, Ian Henderson and Sean O'Brien and CJ Stander were all chopped down early doors. And England did the same to us. And when teams get that bit right against us, our attacking game does slow down.
Right.
And that is an issue. And there is a change in defence as well. Players are being a lot smarter at the ruck as to whether they bother going into the ruck or they leave you have it and get an extra body on their feet. And an extra body in the defensive line makes them a lot more difference than people think.
So, Eddie, varying the strike point you've mentioned there, what level of reinvention are we talking about here is going to be required from an Irish team?
There's not a load, really. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. I mean, you just have to put in extra wrinkles in around the ball carrier. Like there might be a pass inside a tip-on pass outside, a pass out the back. You're going to change your shape dramatically. And we need to do more of that. Like, there's no point in doing a tip-on pass once or twice in 80 minutes.
Yeah.
If you look at our rate of tip-ons, we have 1 or 2 tip-ons in the whole match. You need to do that regularly because, you know, the defence gets comfortable dealing with that one-off runner and they're quite happy to come up and smash them. It's international rugby. Fellas don't miss tackles and fellas put their body on the line every chance they get. So it's not massive changes. Maybe more animation around the ball, more options out the back, passes inside, outside. You don't use them all the time. It's just that the opposition being aware that the possibility is there means they can come up and smash you.
Yeah.
If they do, when you make that tip on, they'll pay a price for it. So it's small stuff like that. So it's very fixable. But we've always been relatively conservative, Joe, with the ball. If you think about it, we've always been a team that don't offload very much. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not the done thing. And that must be coming from the coach who's saying, like, you know, we don't want to do this one. We want to play a more kind of a lower percentage game in that respect. And that's maybe his way of doing it. But if you are getting chopped down and there's, like, our pack over the Six Nations have carried a little bit of ball with very little dividend. We're averaging just over a metre carry over our last 3 games.
Right.
Which is paltry. And you consider how attritionally we play, that's a lot of pressure on the pack.
Yeah. So what Eddie's talking about there really, Keith, is the odd tip-on pass, changing the point of attack, the odd offload. Not that it needs to become our MO, but it puts manners on a defence which is inclined or tempted to charge right up on this Irish attack at the moment.
Well, I think we see this happening in the mid-years of every World Cup cycle, especially to New Zealand. That's where they tend to get targeted most, as people tend to find out how they've actually played and try and put a game plan together to mess them up a little. Well, it's the first time that we've ever been the lofty heights of 2 in the world, and where we are on everybody's radar. So I think we're suffering a little bit from our success of last year. And I don't know whether we've rested on our laurels, but I don't know. We don't look like we were fully expecting people to figure this out as well as we have. So I do think it's moderate change, and that sounds like the wrong word, but we know that what we do is successful. We do need to make some changes on it. As we talked about last week, I think we just need to protect Johnny a little bit more, and that not every lovely pre-planned play leads to him being smashed because he has to give the ball at the last second for it to work. I mean, I think that's something that has to change. And I also feel when we talk about Eddie talking about our meters for 1 metre gain each carry, most of our forwards, and I would say the vast majority, catch the ball, then run. You can't make, that's strength, that's not power. You can't burst over the line at that stage. When our players are making gain lines, it's they're attacking the ball. They're attacking the ball with a bit of pace. And if you look at Wales, was it Corey Hill's try on, was it Corey Hill that scored the try?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
The line he took was from 15 yards back. I mean, it would have taken a brick wall to stop him getting over. It was a phenomenal line, but he caught the ball at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And too often we seem to be setting things up at times, which means we're never going to have those huge numbers. Now, if that's part of how we play, that's absolutely fine. You then need strike runners elsewhere. And at the moment, our strike runners, and some of them in Ringrose and Henshaw in particular, are on the physio bench.
Yeah.
And CJ was one of the men who always got us over the gain line. So life is tougher in that sort of situation. I just think we got out of it with 2 wins. That's the way I would look at it. I think England took a huge amount out of us. And I thought we were very poor at the weekend. I thought it was hard to watch.
Yeah.
And I think we got the benefit of a couple of decisions that could have made it much harder still. And as it was, there was no jubilation at the end. They got out there. They played a match. They didn't play well. They won. They have 2 weeks before they get back in there. They just, they've done what they've had to do, even though it wasn't pretty. The performance wasn't anywhere near as good as they would have wanted. They've got what they needed to get out of it, and they have to build on that. And they maybe have to kind of rectify their body language a little. I mean, they're chippy, and you can see the pressure. And this is bearing in mind, there's a lot of these players. Actually, I didn't mention James Ryan wasn't playing, and he has been integral to a lot of Ireland's change in momentum from the forward pack. But this is the first time an awful lot of these guys have lost, and they haven't even lost, but that they've lost their confidence. So this is a new thing for them.
No, it's true. It's true, and I think their tolerance for errors and mistakes has dwindled because they touched the heights of last year. They have less tolerance for it. I think that was apparent in their body language. Can I play you a man whose body language was much discussed, especially when he exited the pitch? Johnny Sexton was in Off the Ball Studios in the last 24 hours or so. He was speaking to Owen Sheehan. Here was his general sense of things.
Yeah, frustration. A better performance, relief that we got what we wanted to out of the fixture in terms of 5 points. But yeah, a lot of things that we'd wanted to put out there didn't happen, and a lot of frustration, really.
Yeah, it must be a strange one, like getting a bonus point win away from home and having those feelings in the aftermath of the game. Yeah,
but that's the expectation now that we have on us, and I'm talking about expectation internally that we expect to perform to close to our maximum every game, and when we don't, we're really disappointed. And over the last few weeks, we haven't managed to get to those highs just yet. There's been reasons for that, but we just have to take it on the chin at the moment and just keep working hard and keep trying to fix some of the things. If you saw some training last week, you would have thought that we were going to go over and set the world alight in Italy, and things just didn't happen the way we had planned, but showed good resilience, I suppose, coming out after half time and being a little bit better, getting 2 tries to nothing conceded in the second half, and still wasn't brilliant, but it was good to come out of that with a win.
Our rugby coverage is brought to you thanks to Vodafone, Team of Us. We're on YouTube and Facebook and Periscope right now. Send us your thoughts and you can be named our Heineken Star Comment of the Week and win yourself some Heineken and Off the Ball goodies. Eddie, the rugby kind of comes in fits and bursts, so we're in a 6-nation cycle now, and all the coaches will go away and analyse the tape, and they'll have a World Cup pre-season across the summer, and there will be new things that we'll see, new wrinkles, new game plans come World Cup time. So with that in mind, say the next 2 games don't go very well for Ireland, will that stench carry over into pre-World Cup, sun on their backs, the excitement of a World Cup, pre-season for the World Cup? Like, I guess what I'm asking is, how important do you think it is, having been in around campaigns which have gone well and gone badly, how important is it that Ireland finish well against Wales and France? And if it finishes badly, am I being a bit too optimistic to almost wonder, can you almost just park it, say, that was a mess, a million little different things went wrong, we had injuries, blah, 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 and when everyone gets together in 3 months' time, it's a fresh start and the mood is good again? Is that possible?
You're asking me, Joe, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's not really possible. I think you could be in denial about it. I know myself, if I think back, we had a really bad run in the autumn of 2005. We got well beaten by the All Blacks. We lost a game to Australia. We might have won, but we didn't deserve it. And then we played badly against Romania, but we still won. One of those, and we were really nervous. And I felt that Six Nations, it was palpable that Six Nations that we had a bit of a hangover from the autumn, and it took that whole championship to fix it. I knew when, if you think about Six Shaggy scoring on the corner in Twickenham, that was the Triple Crown. That flipped the switch for us. We were in a much better place. We had a really good tour. That summer we nearly beat New Zealand. That summer in New Zealand a couple of times. So there's the notion of just park the Six Nations if it turns out really bad and walk away and everything will be fine come August. Because the warm-up games, they're only warm-up games. They don't really tell you anything. There's not real pressure around them, although there will be pressure around them if they're not playing well, which mightn't help either. And the recipe for warm-up games is to give guys a run, to try things out. And suddenly, like if you remember in 2011, I watched it closely because I was coaching the US against Ireland. The warm-up games didn't go very well before the World Cup in 2011, but they're there for that purpose, to get all that stuff out of the system. But if you go into that World Cup kind of preview and you've a hangover from the spring, it's not going to help at all. There's no way you can park this, and this is why these last 2 games are really, really important.
You mentioned Shane Horgan there. He he scared us all and made us sit up a bit straighter in the analysis afterwards by even mentioning the 07 World Cup. And he said it's not a direct parallel, clearly, and it clearly isn't a direct parallel for obvious reasons. He just said there was an echo of it. There was that struggle to wrestle back momentum. Was kind of what you felt he was getting at. So you've been in the midst of that struggle to wrestle back momentum. So in a way, you can really identify with what they're trying to do now. What might you have done in 07 that you didn't try to wrestle back momentum that might, you don't want to give advice from the outside to the team now, but that might be useful advice in some way to what a team trying to wrestle back momentum?
I think the difference between now and 07 is in 07 we were in the World Cup, right in the middle of it. And we had two teams to play that we should have beaten comfortably. We didn't, and that really drained away our confidence. And then we had two teams to play who ended up third and fourth in the tournament, and we were really we really had to flip something. But the trouble is finding something to catalyse it, and the best catalyst for that is a good performance. Get a good performance under your belt, get a good hit out, the passes start sticking, we start making tackles, but it's hard to find, as we've seen, because you would have thought Ireland would have got into that space after England, and then they said, well, get into that space after Scotland, and now we got into that space after Italy. So they've got to find a way of flipping the switch, and the difference is that we're not in the World Cup, we're in the Six Nations, and the game against France is very important, because if we look at this through a positive prism, if we go out next week and we beat France and we play pretty well, not to shoot the lights out, and then we go into Cardiff and we play really well in Cardiff, and we still might not win because Cardiff is an incredibly difficult place to win and Wales could go on for a Grand Slam. But if we get two solid performances under our belt, then the worries we have about Italy and Scotland all fade away a bit. Not completely, but everyone feels a little bit better. And that takes pressure off. And with pressure off, guys are more likely to be more comfortable in the game and not to panic if things go wrong or not to get down. And it's like a tipping point. You need to find a tipping point here. And that's why, like, when you're in a World Cup and that happens, it's very hard to find a tipping point because you don't have time. You don't have the latitude to do it. And if your players are off form, like a lot of the criticism back in 07 was, I stuck with the guys who had played so well in the championship, and I was criticised for that, which is reasonable criticism. But you saw last week there, I think Joe Schmidt, if they had two really good Six Nations games under their belt, he may have got Conor Murray arrest and Johnny Sexton arrest. But because they're looking for their form, he had to push through with them again. And it's worrying they didn't play well, but again, he'll have to push through them again now against France and hope they find their form along the way. And when the other point about that is there are two key players, and when they're not playing well, that it's harder for everybody else to pick it up.
Sure.
If they start playing well, they could bring a lot of guys with them.
Yeah.
So it's not that complicated, but that doesn't mean it's not difficult.
No doubt. Keith, we're talking about individuals who are having crises of confidence, and we're talking about a collective crisis of confidence. Over the course of your career, did you happen upon good quick fix techniques to fix confidence?
There's very few great techniques that are quick fix. I can tell you that. But I lost my confidence often, and it often came back from surgery. Where and actually one of the things which rarely gets talked about is when you come back from surgery, you often change how you play, and in fact you have to change how you play. And I don't know whether that would happen so much anymore. But I remember going on the Lions tour, and by the end of the tour, I was holding the ball entirely different than I was at the start, because I couldn't hold it any way differently from the start. And it took a period of time to get the confidence, and that's not even the confidence to throw it. It was the confidence to hold my arm properly at that time. And I'd say if you were to say to do that now, you would say, well, you don't play now. But so I do think it takes a bit of getting back from. But look, I disagree with a couple of things that Eddie was saying there. You were saying that if we play badly for the next 2 weeks, whether that has such a huge impact on the World Cup. I look at it differently as a ex-player. I would be unbelievably upset if we don't play well for the next couple of weeks. But I also know that I'd then be going to a World Cup 6 months hence, and we have to still do an incredible job at that stage. And I'm not saying that you hide what happened in the last while, but irrespective of what has happened, in the 2 weeks since we got beaten to England, we played badly, but we played badly and won. That's a big, big positive. I've played in teams where we've played badly and lost. I've played on teams where we've played well and lost, and those sort of areas. So I think we've had our poor performances, but we've had the results that we needed to get. So that's one thing I would say. How we perform in the next while, I would still expect a big difference in our performance, because I think we've been a little bit fragile, a little bit lackluster at energy levels. And again, like Eddie and I are both saying something similar and different at the same time, is that if Johnny and Conor play an awful lot better, the team might come with them. But I actually think that the responsibility is across all 15 or 23. It can't just be on two guys. And I don't know that those guys owe us anything for what they've done over the last number of years. So I would be saying you'd expect the team to raise the level. And as I said earlier on, put everything on a platter for them. If they're having a hard time, make it a bit easier for them, you know, and see what happens then. But like, I know this for me, I can still remember those emotions that you have when you think about when things aren't going well. You just want to get on the field again. You want to get out and try and get it right in real time.
Yeah.
And if they are training that well, as apparently every player has said that they trained that well up to Italy, they will get it right. Maybe they mightn't train quite as much. Maybe they just try and leave as much as they possibly can so that they can have it for match day. Because we did look a little bit flat and have done for this whole thing.
Yeah.
So for whatever the reason is that, whatever you can change, they're proper fixes you can change. But in terms of confidence, I can tell you that every single time I had a crisis of confidence, or whatever you'd call it, whether something was going wrong or you're trying too hard, which they were discussing during the week, the way you get through that is never on your own. You do it through your teammates. So the fact that I was in between two props and I'd have Claw giving me a bollocking to tell me to get my head out of my ass and stop being down on myself. It's time that you strut your stuff again. You do your job, do it properly. And tough love maybe, but the right love at the right time, I suppose it would be the way it would be. I think it's been incredibly negative. And I kind of feel a little bit protective. And I know I'm retired 16 years, but I'm still feeling a little bit protective of the fact that these are guys that won everything that they could win last year. And yet we seem to be very keen on beating them down at the moment. I know we're not, but you know what I mean? That general tone that seems to be kind of going around at the moment, for me, is a little bit too negative. And I don't think it should be. We've got the wins, having not done so well.
So we saw the flags waving at the Stade de France. We saw blue skies. We saw Ramos at 15, Intermac at 10. Dupont has caught a lot of people's eye at 9. And we saw the likes of Uge and Fiku in their right positions. I presume, Eddie, that Jacques Brunel is not going to tear up that back line. But I'm not, no guarantees. So what kind of France are coming to Dublin then if he sticks with that kind of shaped team that we saw against Scotland?
Good question, but I would say a French team that are capable of lighting things up, but no less fickle than they've ever been. If you look at it from a French perspective, they were under huge pressure last weekend to get a result because they've been so abysmal in the championship. So they get Scotland into Paris. It's a weaker Scotland team who are not really anywhere near the form they'd expect either. And the typical French thing is when things go wrong is you give youth their fling. So they've done that.
Yeah.
And it's happened. It's clicked. So they'll come to Dublin thinking they'll do the same on us. No. Interesting question is, will we let them? I would suspect that if we give them the freedom of the Aviva Stadium, they could do a number on us. There's no doubt about it. Because they have phenomenal athletes and they're phenomenal players. At the same time, we need to get under their skin early doors. We need to throw the first punch. And I guarantee you, if we get on top of them, they'll get on the bus and go home because they have got that breathing space they're looking for from the public at home. Like everyone's still waving French flags after last weekend to think some sort of, corner has been turned in French rugby with the young fellas coming in and lighting up. But if I get to Scotland, they beat. So I think they're vulnerable, but like any French team, you've got to show them they're vulnerable. If you don't show them they're vulnerable, they actually believe their own nonsense. And they're capable of playing like really good rugby on a nice day, and if the ball sticks, they can kill you. They've always been like that. But I think we need to make a statement early in that game against France, and if we can get a hold of that game and then go after France, that could be the turning point for us. That's the danger. And if I guarantee you that French team, if it gets tricky in Dublin, they'll pack their tent.
Yeah.
They're not as brave as they make out. We know that.
Yeah.
But they're believing it at the moment because of the Scotland game. But I wouldn't put any stock in that. I think they are vulnerable. They have some good players, but there's no reason to be afraid of them. But we just have to be sure that we throw the first punch.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, look, Keith, that's very much, that French game is very much a double header, you know, a 6-day turnaround with a travel day over to Cardiff. And it will be more than likely Wales going for a Grand Slam. They seem to pop up out of nowhere and win Grand Slams so much easier than Ireland ever managed to do. How impressed were you with Wales against England?
I thought they were brilliant. I thought they were very enjoyable to watch. I thought England played really well, not doing a whole lot, which is exactly what they did against Ireland for 40 minutes. And I thought they were going to continue to pummel Wales out of the game, and they didn't get a chance to.
Yeah.
And Wales made very few, if any, mistakes. They got themselves into a game, and they brought on Dan Biggar, and suddenly they had variation where they didn't have beforehand, and a level of accuracy that they didn't have beforehand when more people got tired around them. I thought England kept a lot of their players on the field too long.
Right.
And were very late to make the change. And in many respects, Wales did to England what England did to Ireland.
Yeah, perfect. Sorry, I thought your line had frozen there. No, that's fine. Just before you go, interesting news on Jack McGrath. Rory O'Connor had this in the Irish Independent. So the understanding is that both the IRFU and Jack McGrath frustrated at the lack of game time at Leinster. And McGrath is understood to have initiated the talks and the move to Ulster, which are at an advanced stage, a deal yet to be finalised. Ulster a bit thin at loose head. They've Eric O'Sullivan there, but certainly they'd welcome McGrath. He underwent hip surgery in November. He finds himself, at the moment anyway, behind Dave Kilcoyne in the pecking order. His only appearance to date came off the bench in Rome. I mean, just, year and a half ago, he was a lion. This is a bit of a blow for Leinster, Eddie. I'd say they're getting sick and tired of that road up to Ulster at this stage. You don't know what McGrath's fitness is like. That may be an issue here. You have hip surgery in December. That's no small thing. It's another interesting move, though. This is becoming more and more the norm, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I'm sure Leinster are pretty teed off about it because, you know, it does leave them weaker. I mean, McGrath's an international player, very experienced guy. He's just been held up by another very experienced international player. But the conversation would have been very simple. It would have been Joe Schmidt saying to McGrath, look, you know, you're not getting enough rugby in Leinster. You need to find more rugby. You're not going to, the less rugby you get with Leinster, the less likely you are to play with Ireland. And unless you can get more time at Leinster, you need to look at some other place, and you can't leave the country. So he's got to look at another province. So from Jack McGrath's point of view, his international career is his most important thing to him. He's going to have to play more rugby, and Ulster is a solution to that. As for Leinster, it's tough because as soon as you produce a player, he's hived off somewhere. Like they've already lost Jordy Murphy, they've already lost Joey Carberry, and now it looks like McGrath's going down the same road. And you know, it's for the good of the Irish rugby team, but it doesn't do Leinster much good. So you can see how they'd be pretty put out about it. But I can see the logic, but it's a catch-22 for McGrath. He stays in Leinster, he might not play much for Ireland, and if he goes to Ulster, Leinster are going to suffer. So. And he's a Leinster guy, so it's one of those imponderables. But I think it's all about the Irish team again. That's where the focus is. Whatever's best for Ireland is best for everybody. And I think McGrath's only doing what he has to do to stay in the frame for the Irish team. Yeah,
as the piece says, the RFU and McGrath both wanted the move to happen, and McGrath's frustrated. The RFU wanted to play as well. There's not really much Leinster can do here. You know, this may very well keep on happening to them time and time again, victims of their own success in some ways. There's not really much of a stand they can make. They can't block McGrath going.
Yeah, goddamn their academy or school system that's bringing out so many players. But look, I think that I'd rather if he was staying in Leinster. But this is the next best opportunity, and we have to be a little bit pragmatic about it. And I think it's very tough. However, he is in contract. So you've said the IRFU and Jack McGrath have said they're frustrated. But if Leinster decide that, no, we're keeping him for the remainder of his contract, do they have the right to do that? It's a national contract, so I don't know if they do. But if it was any other contract, well, you're still there for another year, and if you decide that you're not going to put it in, we'll just hold you on the bench or whatever. You know, they can play hardball if they want to. But I don't know whether the national contract allows that to happen. But if I was saying, like, that's what I'm saying, being sort of nasty about it legally. But if you want your players to stay on this island and you want them to be available to play for Ireland, this is going to happen all the time. And in this cycle, it's happening to Leinster, right? And I don't know that there's ever been such a huge cycle. Otherwise, there are a good few Munster players that have moved further away. But in this particular cycle, because of the numbers coming through in Leinster, and because it's the largest, population centre on the island, there's always going to be more players coming through, more players playing, all that sort of stuff. This may be part and parcel for it. There's also a recognition in Jack McGrath that careers are relatively short-lived and finite, so you have to make the best opportunity that you can. And he'd like to play in a World Cup. He'd like to continue playing for Ireland. He'd like to be playing rugby. It's what these guys do. A rugby player doesn't want to be 24th or 5th man. He doesn't. He wants to be in a squad. He wants to play.
Yeah. Eddie, before we go, you don't know the national contract situation?
Well, it depends on whether he's centrally contracted or contracted by Leinster, but I would suspect a player of his calibre is centrally contracted, although they've reduced that dramatically. But if he's centrally contracted, he's employed by the RFU.
So they
would be able to have a say on where he plays his rugby. But if he's contracted by Leinster, Leinster would have a case. But I think it never comes to that anyway. This is about what's best for the player, and then Leinster will probably feel a bit hard done by, but I don't think that'll stop it happening, particularly if Jack McGrath himself wants to do it. And it would seem, the way the announcement was made with Jack McGrath and the RFU, that's the plan. So, unfortunately for Leinster, it's one of those things that can happen to you. Is the more successful you are, you can be penalised for it sometimes by losing your players because you can't accommodate them all.
Yeah. The understanding in the Irish Independent is that McGrath initiated the talks, so it's clear what his intentions were. Gents, we'll leave it there. Keith Wood, Eddie O'Sullivan, thanks a million.
Cheers, Joe.
Wednesday Night Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us, everyone in.